Sparkies! It's Miss Hannah. We are here at Awana tonight, and we are going to talk about Joseph again. Now, I do need to apologize because I didn't realize we have like 6 lessons about Joseph, and this is lesson number 4. And I believe, I could be wrong, but I believe tonight is the last night of Awana until fall. So, you guys are going to miss out on 2 lessons about Joseph. So, I'm going to try to catch us up. Hopefully, for those who are going into the next group up from us, so I think it's TNT next year, I think there's a few of you that are not going to be in my class come fall. I want you guys to know. So, I'm going to try to catch us up as quickly as possible. But tonight's lesson is about Joseph and about dreams that come true. So last week we spoke about how he told the Pharaoh what his dreams meant. So this week we're going to talk about those dreams coming true after he told Pharaoh that's what God said they meant. So, who wrote the Bible? Do you guys know? God wrote the Bible. Did God sit down with a pencil and paper and write it? No. God used many different people over 1,500 years to write down what he wanted us to know. So he didn't sit down in person and write. He gave this to his people to write. The Bible writers wrote about some events that hadn't happened yet. Now, some of those things have already happened, and some of them will still happen in the future. So there's still things in the Bible that haven't happened yet. When someone tells us what will happen in the future, we call that prophecy. So that's a big word, and if you're at home, say it with me. Prophecy. That is when someone says what will happen in the future. God wanted people to be ready for the future. That doesn't mean that God let the people know what would happen every minute of every day, although God knows that. But he did tell people some of what would happen. Did things always happen the way God said they would? Yes, God was right every single time. God sometimes used people to tell others the news about the future. A person who God used to tell others about the future is called a prophet. Let's all say prophet. So prophecy is when someone tells us what will happen in the future, and the person that tells us that is the prophet. A prophet is someone who prophesies or prophesies. You know what? I'm not sure how you say that. I think it's prophesies or tells the future. A prophet is someone who tells what God says about the future. So, are any of you prophets? Can you predict what will happen in the future? Let's see if any of you can. So I'm going to do one of 3 things here in just a minute. I'm either going to touch my nose, I'm going to tug my ear, or I'm going to scratch my chin. Can you guys guess which one I'm going to do? Can you guys tell me which one I'm going to do next? You know? I'm going to scratch my chin. So it's kind of hard for you to know what's going to happen in the future. So the reason you didn't know what I was going to do is because you didn't know what I was going to do. That sounds silly, but it's true. The only way you can know the future is if you know the future. The only way you can know the future is if God tells you, because he is the only one who knows what will happen after club tonight. What will happen tomorrow and what will happen 100 years from now. So, back in the Old Testament, God sometimes gave messages to people through dreams. Now God tells us about the future in the Bible. Let's review what we have learned about Joseph so far. How did God talk to Joseph when Joseph was young? Through a dream. What did Joseph learn from his dream? That someday his brothers would bow down to him. What did Joseph's brothers do to him? Threw him in a pit and then sold him as a slave. Why did Joseph end up in prison? because he wouldn't listen to Potiphar's wife and do what was wrong. When did Joseph meet while he was in prison? Whom did Joseph meet while he was in prison? The baker and the cupbearer. What did he do for them? Interpreted their dreams. Then what happened? 2 years later, Pharaoh needed a dream interpreted, and the cupbearer remembered Joseph. What did the dream mean? Egypt would have 7 good crop years and then 7 bad crop years. If they stored the crops from the good crop years, they would have enough food for the bad crop years. So I'm sure some of you guys answered those right. If you didn't answer them right, it's a good reason to just maybe get into your Bible and read the stories a little bit more, or if you can find books that maybe are a little bit easier for you to understand, like that just tell the stories, like children's books that tell the stories of the Bibles. Those are great options if you have trouble reading some of the big words in the Bible, but it's always great to go to the Bible first and read it. So now Joseph was in charge of all the crops in all of Egypt, and as always, he did a good job. He kept lots of food for the bad crop years. Do you think a famine came? Yes, it did, because God is always right. The people in Egypt had plenty of food, but the people in the countries around Egypt didn't have any food. People got very, very hungry. Sometimes we get hungry because we don't have food for a couple of hours. These people didn't have much food for days and days and days. Joseph's brothers ran out of food too. Their dad Jacob heard that there was food in Egypt, so he sent his sons to get them. They never dreamed they would be talking to Joseph, the brother they had been unkind to years before. So we are going to read Genesis 42:6. I haven't looked it up yet, because I just realized I needed to do that. So sorry, guys. Genesis, so we're going to go to Genesis 42:6. Okay. Joseph was in charge of the country. He sold grain to all of his people. His brothers came and bowed down before him with their faces to the ground. So, they thought Joseph was dead. They never imagined that Joseph would be in charge of Egypt. Guess what they did when they saw Joseph? Right, they bowed down to him just like God said they would in his dream. Let's say together, God is always right. Joseph is just one example from the Bible when God told people what would happen in the future. There are many other examples. All of these examples are to teach us that God knows everything and He is in control. It is nice to know that we have a smart God who knows everything. Let's say together, God is always right. So, hold on, Bub. I'm almost done, okay? You can sit with me, yeah. Come here. Come here. Okay, so we'll talk about Joseph. Yep, okay. So Joseph, we talk about in this lesson, when the dreams that he interpreted came true. So our next couple of lessons were supposed to be about forgiveness is sweet, which is where Joseph forgives his brothers for the way that he treated them, or the way that they treated him. And the next lesson is about Joseph helps his family. So he does end up helping his family, giving them the food that they need. So I'm going to go over the things that we will learn at the end of Joseph's last lesson, because I want you guys to get a little bit of this, but I don't want to ruin it for the people that will still have it next fall. So I'm going to just tell you guys a little bit about how this story with Joseph is going to end. So, why didn't Joseph's brothers like him? Because his father gave him a special coat, and he favored him. What is special about the coat? The coat is like one worn by royalty or a rich man's son. What was Joseph doing when his brothers decided to throw him into the pit? Making sure they were okay. That's what he went to do. How did Joseph get out of the pit? His brothers sold him to some travelers as a slave. Whose house did Joseph work in when he got to Egypt? Potiphar's.
God.
How do we No, baby. How do we know he was a good worker? Potiphar put him in charge of the entire household. Whom did Potiphar believe when his wife accused Joseph of doing something wrong, and what happened? He believed his wife and threw Joseph into prison. What did Joseph do for the baker and the cupbearer? He interpreted their dreams, like we spoke earlier. How did being known as a dream interpreter help him later? He was called out of prison to interpret Pharaoh's dream. What did Pharaoh's dream mean? So we spoke about this, 7 years of good crops, 7 years bad crops for Egypt. What did Joseph's job then become? Storing the good crops so that there would be enough to eat during the time of the bad crops. What brother was missing when Joseph's brother came to get the food? So this is part of the story you guys did not hear. So when his brothers came to get the food from Egypt, from their brother, actually, which they didn't realize, their youngest brother, Benjamin, did not come. His dad had had another son after Joseph was sold, and he was very protective of him because of what he believed had happened to Joseph. And if you remember, they had said that Joseph had been eaten by wolves, and so he was very protective of his youngest son, Benjamin, because he didn't want to lose another son. So when he came to get the food, Benjamin was told by his father to stay with him and not go to Egypt to keep him safe. So why? Because Benjamin was Joseph's younger brother, another favored son, and Jacob already had lost Joseph. So, like we just discussed. So why did Joseph send them back home? So Joseph sent them back home after they got there because for one, I think he was testing them in a way, but he wanted to check out their attitude. Had it changed from when they were unkind to him? So he sent his brothers back to get their youngest brother to bring back, and they basically was told, you must do this, and they kept one of the older brothers in prison until they returned. So, why didn't Joseph get revenge? So he could have easily been avenged the way that his family had treated him. But instead, when they returned with the brother, he forgave them. He loved his father and he loved his brothers. And he also come to realize the things that had to happen for the dreams that he had to eventually come true. So Joseph could have been mean to his brothers and sent them away with no food. He could have let them starve. Instead, Joseph forgave them for what they did. And then he took those brothers who sold him into slavery and gave them fantastic houses on the best land in Egypt. Joseph not only saved his brothers, he also made sure all their needs were taken care of for the rest of their lives. Joseph saved the brothers who turned against and rejected him. This is exactly what Jesus did for us. He came to earth to save people. Instead, people turned against him and ended up killing him. But God was in control, and Jesus came alive again. He now offers to save all people who believe. So, guys, I know that's not the full lessons for the next 2 weeks. That's not. There's a lot more to that. So I really, really want to challenge you guys this summer to be looking up the story and reading it in its entirety. So start at the beginning of Joseph, end when Joseph forgives his brothers and takes care of his brothers. So I would love for you guys to be reading that, even if Awana is over. That is an awesome, awesome story of love and kindness and forgiveness and just God's amazing power. And I would love to see you guys reading that this summer as you have time, when you can. Just challenge yourself to read it because it's a wonderful, wonderful story in the Bible. I mean, very true, very powerful story in the Bible. And I'd love to see you guys reading the full story, even if you can't read it from like the New King James Version or the King James Version. Look it up in like English Standard Version or the ESV. It's a little easier to read. If you need help, I can always try to find like a good version of this story to send out that will be easier for you guys to understand, because I know that there's some big words in the Bible that are really hard to understand, even for some adults. So I want you guys to understand the story and to really, just enjoy it and see God's love and power in it. So that's my only thing that I have for you guys to do over the summer. And for the ones that I will not see next year, I'm so excited I got to have you guys. I'm sorry that we didn't get to spend the last several weeks of Awana this year together at the church, but I'm so glad I still got to teach you guys a little bit. Well, more like God taught you guys, because let me tell you, I don't know how to teach on my own. But you guys are awesome, wonderful kids, and I hope you guys enjoy your summer. When you get off of this, I do request that you will say a personal prayer about what's going on in your life. I'm going to do it as well, but I want it to be personalized to what is going on with you right now. So I don't want to put words in your mouth. I will say I'm going to be praying about the whole situation with the world right now, and I'm going to be praying about, protection over my family. I'm going to be praying about protection over you guys this summer, while you guys enjoy your summer off from school. And I'm going to be praying for you guys to be keeping in the Word and just keeping with your just reading the Bible or looking up verses if you think that you need a verse for something that's going on in your life. I appreciate you guys always being so good. You guys are great kids. I love you guys, and I will be praying for you guys always. I will see you guys in the fall, hopefully, and we will probably start back up, finishing up Joseph for the ones that will be here in the fall. If not, I will discuss that with you guys when it gets closer, when we get there. And if you guys would rather start on something else, if you guys have all read the story by this point, we will start with the next lessons. So it's kind of just, we'll see. But I will see you guys later, hopefully. And I will be praying for you guys, and just be good for your parents or whoever you are staying with. And I will see you guys later. See you, Sparkies.